We're all middle school teachers, and we understand that these kids right now, their brains are changing every single day. I mean, you know, hormones, chemicals, everything's going on. And for you to take these, to be a part of this movement, because it sounds to me more like you were swept up in it by these kids that were doing all of this promoting, and you just kind of got pulled into it, and you're like, oh, I can help a lot here too.
Well, I think the kids made me realize that I had not been as proactive as I could have been. That although I had friends and family who are LGBTQ, that I hadn't, and I was teaching every day sexuality education, that I could do more.
Did you have to go educate yourself, or were you pretty informed?
I feel like you can always learn. I'm really fortunate that I had a really close friend who's lesbian, and would have long talks about when did you know, and how did you know, and what was it like, and what would you want, and what would you have wanted when you were in school. You know, being a sexuality educator, I believe my philosophy is I'm not there to tell kids what's good or bad, right or wrong. I'm here to provide a place where we can talk about what's true and what's not true. And it's up to each individual to decide for themselves what they value, what they believe, and what's right or wrong for them.
But I have to give you credit also for for being so advanced. Because if I think about the sex ed that I heard about 15 years ago, sex ed was heterosexual education.
Right.
When you talk about sexuality education, they were
It was
talking about the
abstinence.
non-heterosexual,
Well,
but you did that way before the majority of health educators were doing that.
I have to really give a lot of credit to the school system we work in, because when I came back, I had student taught there when I was in college. And when I
The
came
things
back
we learned.
many years later, it was, I came back in '93. And so the 10 years previous were during the AIDS crisis. And our community responded very quickly to the AIDS crisis from the 80s in their curriculum, in their sexuality
Really?
curriculum. So when I first came back in '93, there was a lesson. I mean, it can always be more, but to their credit, there was a lesson about homosexuality, and it was very normalizing and validating and inclusive.
In '93.
In '93.
It's remarkable.
It's
Yeah,
more
it
and
really
more
is.
remarkable every time.
And so I, along with other health teachers that I've worked with over the last 15, 16 years, 14, 15, 16 years, we've expanded that. I changed it. It was called the homosexuality lesson. I changed it to the sexual orientation lesson. And then, quite honestly, you and another colleague gave me another gift, which was, oh, you need to do more work around gender identity and expression. And so we had already been starting to do that work, but
It's one of the highlights of my day to walk into your class to do the presentation with this other person that we work with that's trans, because the kids want to know.
Yeah.
They want to know, and I'm telling you, the groundwork that you all have laid is amazing. My students come up to me and want to know when the next episode of my show is going to be. The students come up to me and want to know, well, one kid yesterday, a perfect example. There is a kid named Jazz, a trans feminine kid. One of the students, 7th grade students, is reading that kid's book. The kid wanted me to know that she was reading this book, all excited about it. I'm reading Being Jazz. And I said, I know that kid. And she goes, well, of course you do. I bet you they're on your show. And I'm like, no, they haven't been on my show, but because of this camp that I volunteer at. And just the things that you all do to help these kids and to help me. I mean, I feel so safe in this school because of the work that you all have laid ahead of time that I didn't even know was being done. I mean, you didn't know what you were doing was going to make my life easier when you did it. I can't imagine you thought, Kelly Jenkins is going to be coming here in 2016. We better start doing this now so she's got it easy.